We are not rare, but before you leave, you will perceive the lore will be unlocked. You might be stalked by a Sasquatch or a ghost witch, possibly even a ghost that will boast about knowing the Ohio Grassman or even the Michigan Dogman. Werewolves hunt, poltergeists are up front, but in these backwoods, folklore is unlocked.
Welcome back to Folklore Unlocked. I'm Austin, and like always, I'm joined by Ethan.
Yep, hello again, everyone.
And this week we are taking a look at the disappearance of Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan. But like I was telling Ethan earlier, Amelia is just kind of the more recognizable name between the two, so we just got it titled The Disappearance of Amelia Earhart. And Amelia's early years, her full name's Amelia Mary Earhart, and she was born on July 24th, 1897, to Samuel Edwin Stanton Earhart and Amelia Amy Earhart in Atchison, Kansas. And according to family customs, she was named after both of her grandmothers, Amelia Josephine Harris and Mary Wells Penn. So she was the third Amelia in her family, just each different names. And she was the second child of Samuel and Amelia, but the first child was stillborn, and she was nicknamed Mealy or Millie, and her younger sister, Grace Muriel Earhart, was nicknamed Pidge, and Amelia was described as a tomboy.
And the Atlantic flight, it left Newfoundland. Well, this is the flight before, I guess. So it left Newfoundland, Canada, in June 17th, 1928, and her aircraft's name was the Friendship. And it completed the flight on June 19th of 1928, and it made her the first woman to fly nonstop across the Atlantic.
Yeah, this flight was just the flight that just made Amelia Earhart.
Yeah, made her famous.
Yeah. And the beginning of the doomed flight, which is the flight that we're really going to dig into here, Amelia started planning the flight in early 1936. And if she would have been successful, she would have become the first woman to complete a complete circumnavigational flight of the entire globe. And also would have been the longest due to the fact she was going to travel along the equator. And Purdue University gave $50,000 or a little over $1.1 million in today's money to buy a Lockheed Electra 10E airplane, and the airplane itself was modified with extra fuel tanks, among other modifications.
It's always insane to see how our money has changed, like inflation-wise, because $50,000 today is like, oh, a good amount of money, but like we said here, it's in 2024 standards, it's over $1 million.
I mean, still a good chunk of change, 50 grand, but
yeah,
imagine $1.1 million.
Uh-huh. And like we said before, that she was not the only one on the plane. There was also Fred Noonan, and how they chose him was he was a licensed ship captain and experience in both marine and flight navigations, and was chosen through contacts within the Los Angeles aviation community to be a navigator.
And the beginning of the flight actually started in Oakland, California, and they traveled to Miami, Florida, where Earhart announced her and Newman's planned flight around the world, and they took off from Miami, Florida on June 1st, 1937. And they arrived at Lae, New Guinea on June 29th, 1937. And at this point, they had covered roughly 22,000 miles, and the remaining 7,000 that would be necessary for the flight to be considered an around the world flight would be over the Pacific Ocean.
It's insane that they got 22,000 miles and only had 7,000 left, and that's where it kind of ended because they got well over half the way.
Yeah, well over half the way.
Mm-hmm. And the route leading up to the disappearance. So they left Lae Airfield at July 2nd of 1937 at 10 a.m. local time. And the destination was Howland Island, which measured 6,500 feet long and 1,600 feet wide. The island was 2,556 miles away, and it expected to take 20 hours to reach. And accounting for time zones and the international date line, the pair was expected to reach Howland the next day of July 2nd.
Now, talk about trippy. Leaving on July 2nd only to arrive at your destination on July 2nd.
Time travel.
And transmissions leading up to their disappearance, so on their way to in between Lae Airfield and Howland Island, Earhart and Noonan were in communication with the United States Coast Guard ship, the Tosca, I believe that's how you pronounce it. And her first report said her altitude was 10,000 feet, but she was going to lower her altitude due to thick cloud cover. And the next communication, Earhart reported her altitude was at 7,000 feet. And between 2:45 and 5 a.m., Earhart just communicated in routine weather reports, and these calls were broken up by static. And about an hour later at 6:14 a.m., Earhart's aircraft was within 200 miles of Howland Island. And the last received transmission, and at this point they were in communication with Howland Island Air Control at this point indicated that Earhart and Noonan were flying on a line running north-south on 157, 337 degrees.
So there are a few hypotheses of where they went. So one was it was Gardner Island hypothesis, and states that Earhart and Noonan, unable to find Howland Island, continued to fly on the 157-degree path and made it to Gardner Island, and that's where they possibly crashed at.
And then there's kind of three theories in this captured by Japan, or hypothesis, whichever you choose to call them. And the first one is not very likely to, because that they were hypothesized to be captured on the island of Saipan, which is 2,700 miles from Howland Island. And like we said earlier, that they were within 200 miles of Howland Island at one point. So it's not very likely that they were at Saipan. And later suggested to have been captured on the Marshall Islands, which is still highly unlikely due to the Marshall Islands being 800 miles from Howland. And kind of two theories that come from those theories is either both of them were executed, or Amelia was forced to become a Tokyo Rose, with Noonan, I guess, being either captured by Japan and executed, or just remaining alive.
Yeah, I don't know for sure if they would have gone almost 2,500 miles off course to the island of Saipan. That seems a little bit unlikely. But I mean, the 800 miles, I mean, possibly, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, unlikely for somebody with the skills of Earhart and Noonan combined, but still.
And then there's also that they were spies for FDR. And the rumors started more or less by Flight for Freedom, which is in 1943, in which a female pilot who was inspired by Earhart was part of a spy ring in the Pacific.
And remember, this was in the lead up to World War II for America, so that rumor kind of makes sense. And another hypothesis that we don't have down, but it's kind of popular in disappearances like this, is aliens.
It's always aliens.
And on to our thoughts, considering that Amelia had made radio communications reporting of thick cloud coverage and difficulty seeing through fog and clouds, and that they were having some radio static. I honestly think a crash landing, whether on a different island, like Gardner Island, or in the ocean, is probably the most likely to have happened.
Yeah, I agree that crash landing is the most likely outcome that happened, but it's hard to say where since the plane was never found. Now, I will say that the ocean is quite a bit bigger than any of the little islands that are around there, so I would say most likely probably ocean crash landing, but it is possible that it was on some other island. But if it was some other island, I feel like we'd find some sort of wreckage. So,
Yeah, I agree. If it was on one of the smaller islands, unless they were captured by the Japanese and everything was cleaned up all nicely,
or if it was the aliens.
or aliens. But with I'm of the belief that what's the most likely to have happened is probably what happened, and it does seem like the crash landing idea is the best idea we've got. And I think that's all we've got for this week. Next week, we are take a look at the Lake City Quiet Pills. So, any last words, Ethan?
Just thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube, leave us a like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening. If you're on Spotify, drop us a follow and a comment, and we'll see you next week.
You might wake up beside Spearfinger with an extended visit from Jack the Ripper. But if you're lucky, it'll be an angel on that range hill of Louisiana. You might meet Mary Laveau or the Road. At Folklore Unlocked, Austin and Ethan concoct their theory of the eerie and unexplained around the world, sometimes even the underworld. The lore is locked behind secrets, the folklore is meant to be unlocked. The Sokaloo is haunting NC as well as Tennessee. There are many giants that might be clients of the Dark Watchers, who might have psychokinesis. And the phantom time hypothesis is like the phoenix, coming back around again and again. Though there's a strain on your brain if you've got more than 2 brain cells in you. Some believe McCartney is dead because they read into the Mandela effect, which is subject